our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Monmouth in the flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
And this is Cher's Voodoo Doll Mike.
I'm Colton.
It's Jill.
And we are back, and we're celebrating. I've got the drinks out, so you know we're in trouble this episode. The 4-year anniversary, and I felt it was only right I gave like a little monologue to my fellow co-hosts on the 4-year, just how I feel about the podcast.
Oh, all right.
So I just wanted
Charlie XCX how I'm feeling now.
So I just wanted to let you guys know that it's another glorious night on the podcast. Day on this podcast is like a day on the farm. Every meal's a banquet, every paycheck's a fortune, every review a parade. I love this podcast. Yeah, so you know I'm pumped for this episode.
What the fuck was that, Ron? I'm screaming! Where is that from? There's no way you sat down and penned that. Where did you rip that from?
I don't believe it.
I mean, that's a quote from the great Al Matthews, Sergeant Al Apone.
Oh,
okay.
Is it any of those words supposed to make sense?
Oh my god.
Was that only in the director's cut, or?
No, that's like a famous monologue in this movie.
God.
Jeez.
I must have been glazed over at that point.
I literally must have blacked out because I don't remember that at all. But I did watch the 4-hour and 75-minute cut of this movie, so.
That's what you get for pirating.
I totally did.
I was actually going to call you out, Rowan, because I thought that Hello Horror Hounds was pretty low energy, but you followed up with a poem, so I'll give you a pass.
I was saving the energy. I was just ready to embrace the evening. But anyway, we're before we get into the whole episode, we have so many announcements, so many new and exciting things, and we're going to let Colton rant about it while I continue to sippy on my drinky.
Oh my god, Rowan's half cut. We're 5 minutes into the podcast. Yeah, I just figured before we get to any announcements or anything exciting, well, too exciting, I just kind of wanted to thank everybody who participated in the 4th anniversary poll. We had nearly 1,100 votes cast when it was all said and done. And the difference between first and second place came down to only 3 votes. So, I mean, it was pretty tight.
That's
probably even more so if we just kind of cut out Jill's votes because she kept voting despite us telling her not to vote. But that's all right. You know, we'll
that's not true. But anyway.
So, yeah, if you're listening to this, you see the podcast artwork. You see the title of the episode. Obviously, Aliens has won our 4th anniversary poll.
Finally.
And, I mean, it's been, I think, in all 3 years of polls, right? But it never got there. I think this was the first time it made it to the finals, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it always just loses.
And what it really came down to this time was the second day of voting in our final round, because Get Out got more votes on Twitter. It did more votes day 1 and day 3 on Instagram. It was just like day 2, for whatever reason, Aliens like won in a landslide. Like, it got so many votes, and just Get Out couldn't really catch up after the fact, so I was a little bit bummed out about that, but I kind of feel like we'll still wind up discussing Get Out at some point in the future. But yeah, that's not what we're here for tonight. We're here to celebrate the show's 4th anniversary, and I guess we have a big announcement. Rowan, did you kind of want to hype it up a little bit, or you just want to get into it, or what are we doing?
I mean, let's just get into it. I mean, if I talked any more, I'm just going to monologue some more, and that's going to embarrass us all, so.
Well, I guess
that was an inspirational quote, not a monologue.
I mean, there's no better way, I think, to kick off the podcast than with that. Yeah, so I guess what we're dancing around is just we're relaunching our Patreon. It's sort of been operating in the background for the past year without much fanfare, as we really wanted to take our time and ensure that we were releasing this show on a consistent schedule and offering something of value before people or before asking people to financially support it. And I think over the past year, I think we've done just that. We've had an episode every 2 weeks, in addition to 25 episodes of Now Slaying. So I feel like we're starting to hit our stride. So what we settled on behind the scenes was basically 2 tiers, a $1 tier and a $5 tier. And for the $1 tier, you will become part of the Shade Brigade.
Oh, no.
Obviously named lovingly after Exilia and Mike popularizing it on the show. And for becoming part of the Shade Brigade, you get access to all of the episodes on the main show 48 hours in advance through Patreon's exclusive RSS feed, which can be played on the podcast service of your choice. I support a few different podcasts on Patreon, and it's super easy to set up. You kind of just set it up once and forget about it, and just all your exclusive early content kind of comes through when it's released. In addition to the early access, you also get access to a new monthly Patreon exclusive show, Stream Screams, which is hosted by Jill.
Oh,
She's chuckling on her side. I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet because Rowan never sent me an edit, but I assume it's good. I don't know.
It's something.
It's where Jill and Rowan so far watch absolutely terrible horror movies that would never see the light of day on the main show, but are available for all of us to enjoy or despise on our streaming platform of choice. So the first episode of Stream Screams will be available to everyone later today on the general podcast feed to get a taste of what you can expect from our first Patreon exclusive show. And who knows, if this does well, maybe we'll do other exclusives in the future. And next up is our $5 tier, which of course we named it after our horror hounds. As a horror hound, you're likely one of the biggest fans of the show. And because of that, you get everything that's in the Shade Brigade tier, plus a shout out at the end of every episode in which you are a patron, be it Now Slaying or the main show or any other spin-offs that may crop up. Essentially, you're a producer and a big part of what makes the show possible. And continuing on in that sort of producer vein, we've also been flirting with letting our Horror Hands tier choose a movie once a year for us to review. We've done that in the past, and it's worked out well. But it'll kind of depend on how many people pledge at this tier, because we still want to be able to kind of choose what we want to review and not have every episode be a Patreon pick. So maybe we'll wind up doing polls or something, but I mean, whatever we decide, you'll be part of it. So there's more to come on that front. And I also just kind of, I'm just rambling, but I did want to explain like why we decided to go this route with basically 2 tiers. And it's just because we didn't want any exclusive content to be locked at the higher tiers. We wanted anybody who wanted to get the exclusive content to be able to do so at the $1 tier. And if you want to pledge a higher amount to get, to support the show in a different way, you can feel free to do it. But do not feel pressured to financially support us at all. We do not want anyone to become a patron if it'll like cause undue financial hardship or anything like that. We appreciate people listening, engaging with our socials, and helping spread the word of It Slays in whatever way you can. Patreon is just another way to show your support and help to grow the show. So with that said, I think I should probably announce our first Patreon goal, which will be if we get 15 patrons, we'll do video for every episode of the main show. Last year we did a Patreon poll, and it was the #1 thing that our viewers requested. So I figured if we can get 15 patrons, we'll do it. I've been messing around with OBS in the background as we've been recording, Discord video capture. I've edited triple camera podcasts in the past, so we have the know-how to
start
do
wearing
it.
Clothes.
you gotta take off the pajama pants, or well, I don't know if I'll do that, but
you'll have to put a shirt on, Mike. Jeez.
We know how to do it. It's just a little time consuming, so we want to make sure there's a demand for it before we do so. So yeah, I'm basically done with my rambling. It's probably been 4 or 5 minutes. So if you'd like to see our ugly mugs captured on video, be sure to head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and pledge to whatever tier works for you. Yeah, don't feel obligated to do so if you don't have the financial availability to do it, but we appreciate any support.
So yeah, let's get into it. You know where we're gonna start on getting into the episode. What media have we been consuming? It seems like it's been forever, but it really hasn't.
It's been a while.
Yeah. Let's start with Jill.
All right. So again, I hope you're ready for nothing. I haven't really been doing much lately, but I'm watching the 2nd season of White Lotus. I'm watching The Last of Us, like the rest of us. And I started watching the first part of the new season of You, and that's all I got. So all good stuff.
Nice.
What about you, Mike?
I have been retreating, so I've just been having like a very anxious couple of weeks, so when that happens I retreat into, I don't want to say trash because I always watch trash, but I've had more trash going in the background than usual, but also I just like constantly have Twitch on, so I've mostly honestly just been watching people Twitch stream. I have not been watching The Last of Us because I did not catch up, and then every week I feel like I'm falling further behind. But I did, however, over the weekend, my friend's boyfriend, when we were going to have a movie night and drink, made the mistake of telling us that he had never seen the movie But I'm a Cheerleader, which is an absolute cult classic. And so, of course, we proceeded to get very drunk and show him the movie. So that was really fun to watch that again, because it's one of my absolute faves. No, so honestly, like that and just playing Fortnite because the new season started. So that's really all I got. What about you, Ro? Oh, and I started reading a book that has a slur in the title, so I can't say it. I'll show you guys on the camera.
It rhymes with
the title
maggots.
is literally just a slur. Okay, all right.
Jill can say it.
I mean, you are what you read.
Wow.
Ouch.
Can you lend me that book?
Sorry,
later?
Ro. Yeah. You got it.
Perfect.
So I knocked a pretty big one out. I hope Colton's sitting down. A little thing called Everything, Everywhere, All at Once.
Oh, you hid this from me. You never logged it.
Let me tell you a secret. I didn't watch it. I just wanted to see what you'd say if I said I
you
watched it.
motherfucker. Why would you do that? I was so excited. That was the most I felt alive in like the last 3 days.
You should have seen your face. Like, what an asshole.
I might just never see it now and just see how long we can go. No, so I've done a little bit of watching. I watched Alone at Night, which is a new straight-to-video horror movie that has Paris Hilton and Pamela Anderson. It also it stars Ashley Benson from Pretty Little Liars.
You're forgetting the most important person.
Yeah, and it was pretty good. I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to. Paris Hilton, Pamela Anderson, if that's not your thing, don't be scared away. They're like very brief cameos that obviously a straight-to-video movie would promote. Like, these are the stars of the movie. They're in it for like 30 seconds. But this is actually like a pretty cool meta slasher flick, like real basic slasher flick, and does some cool stuff at the end. Another one, which we're seeing a trend with, involving the world of cam girls. So, kind of interesting. Had fun with that. I finished up In Search of Darkness Part 3, which is a Shudder exclusive. It's a documentary series about 80s horror. There's 3 parts. All 3 parts, I think, are 5 or 6 hours long each, and they just basically go through gems of the 80s, whether they're well-known or hidden gems, and it's just really interesting if you're into that kind of thing, documentaries about movies and interviews with like actors, directors, academics. It's super interesting. For a newer movie, I saw Plane, Gerard Butler's movie that came out.
Did you see that they're doing a sequel to it called Ship?
Oh my god.
I'm not joking.
I'm on board. It wasn't anything like great. It was a callback to like 90s action movies. It's like, you know, we're on a plane, we're on an island, there's like terrorists, and it's just one guy that's gonna plow through them.
All right.
I'm all for it. It's got, why can't I think of his name? It's got buddy that played Luke Cage in the Netflix series in it also.
Yeah, spoilers for Plane. I think he's the star of Ship. That guy is
perfect, because he's awesome. You know, he's like the best thing Marvel's ever done.
What, you think Luke
can we
Cage
talk about
is the
how
best
they
thing?
already did this movie?
Ship or Plane?
Is it called Air Force One?
No, it had Jodie Foster in it.
Oh, yeah.
They mentioned Goose Bay in that one. I think it's like Red Eye, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that.
The airport.
Or Flight Plan. There's two.
Flight Plan, that's what it is. Flight, because she designed
I
the
don't
plane.
remember
That's
which
what it
one.
was, yeah.
Yeah, Jodie Foster.
No, Red Eye was the Wes Craven movie that had Cillian Murphy and Rachel McAdams in it, which was weirdly not talked about at all.
So one of them, they land in Goose Bay, which is my hometown for listeners, and they have like SWAT teams and everything rolling into the airport, and it looks like a big like metropolitan city. I'm like, y'all have never been to Goose Bay. There's 8,000 people that live here. We don't have SWAT, But it was great. There was like a special note on the movie when we saw it in theaters.
Yeah, so I did a lot of like rewatches. I'm not really gonna get like heavy into. I rewatched a childhood favorite, Dead Presidents, that's directed by the Hughes. They did Menace to Society. This was like kind of their bigger budget film after that was a hit, and it's amazing. It's got like Freddie Rodriguez from 6 Feet Under, and Lorenz Tate, Keith David, Chris Tucker. It's kind of like a mix between a bank robbery movie and a Vietnam War movie, and it's just really well acted. I'm a huge fan of it. Rewatch Spice World. Because how can you not?
Because it's the 25th anniversary.
Spice World, yeah. So me and Exilia sat down. I bought her. We found a VHS copy of it. So plugged her into the VHS, watched it, and it was amazing. We also went on a little date night. Saw Titanic remastered in 3D, which was epic. I was not looking forward to it. I thought it was like kind of just gonna be a good time, laughs. I was actually like, man, this movie slaps. I forgot this movie does slap. Everyone at the theater was like 15 and under. We were the only adults in the entire theater.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was kind of funny. There was like a lesbian couple behind us, and all they did was very loudly talk about how badly they wanted to do Kate Winslet the entire time.
Valid.
Period.
And so I thought that was kind of funny. And yeah, it was just a good time. The only other couple I'll mention, I rewatched Deadstream. Visited my mother. She wanted a horror movie to watch. I thought she'd be into it because of the Evil Dead vibes. She enjoyed it. She liked it. So that was a great success. Saw Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I thought it was all right.
That's a big watch. That's big.
February 14th, of course, we had to watch the original My Bloody Valentine. It's a must on Valentine's, and it slaps. What can I say? It's a Canadian classic. It's a horror classic, and it's amazing. If you don't own like the Scream Factory Edition, buy it, because it's got all the deleted footage, like, put back in, all the gore, and it's awesome. Anyway,
it is an excellent movie.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Anyway, I'm going to leave it at that. Colton, how about you?
I feel like I've already done enough talking this episode, but I did check out a few things over the last couple of weeks. We did a Now Slang on Knock at the Cabin and Skinamarink, which obviously Rowan has seen, and Jill was on Skinamarink. And I enjoyed both of those to varying degrees. But, I mean, to hear me discuss those, just head on over and listen to those episodes. Considering the time of year, Rowan just mentioned it, I watched the original My Bloody Valentine for the first time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I was surprised. It was a pretty great little slasher. I really enjoyed it.
It is.
Yeah, like, man, I watched the Scream Factory version, with the uncensored kills or whatever.
Yeah.
And they were pretty gnarly. I was very surprised with what they accomplished with the special effects there. The cast were really good. They were enjoyable to watch the whole time. And I just really enjoyed the like small town East Coast Canada vibes. I realized the movie wasn't supposed to be set there, but I mean, everyone had the accents and it looks like Nova Scotia. So
exactly.
I kind of echo what Rowan said. If you haven't seen My Bloody Valentine already, check it out. It's definitely worth your time. And then like the other thing that I've been watching is Jill mentioned it. I've been watching The Last of Us, obviously, on HBO. And I haven't really spoken about it too much on the pod yet, but I think it's great. The Last of Us is one of my favorite video games of all time, and despite the show making some tweaks in the adaptation, they basically all make sense for a television adaptation. The latest episode in particular had a sequence in it that was kind of straight out of World War Z. If in World War Z you actually cared about the characters, and if in World War Z there was a bunch of practical performers with amazing special effects makeup rather than just a bunch of shitty CGI. And then despite that huge action set piece,
They had me kind of emotionally walloped like a good 10 to 15 minutes later. So if you had any reservations on the show, I think you should definitely check it out. If you're a fan of the game, I would suspect you'd be a fan of this. And I do think Bella Ramsey and Pedro Pascal are great as Joel and Ellie. And going into it, I was a little bit worried about Bella Ramsey, but she like literally completely won me over by like the end of the first or second episode. Whenever she cursed at Joel the first time, I was like, all right, you got it. Like, you don't look like Ellie, but you feel like Ellie. And that's, good enough for me in this adaptation. So yeah, I think, it's very good, and it's definitely well worth a watch and a damn impressive video game adaptation. Similar to Rowan, I went to the theater to see the big James Cameron movie, Avatar: The Way of Water. Of course, I went to go see it again. And this time I rewatched it in the high frame rate version. And man, is that just a complete abomination. Like, high frame rate and cinema should not mix. It is awful. Like, when I was watching it the entire time, I felt like it was glitching. The movie like literally shifts back and forth between like 24 frames a second when people are talking to 48 sometimes, to 60 to sometimes, to like 120. And it's constantly changing. Like in a scene, it'll change 3 or 4 times. So if you are someone who's very sensitive to that and can notice it, like me, like, it was a 3 hour and 15 minutes of just constantly changing. It was always a distraction. There wasn't like one time that like it worked for me. So I would not recommend seeing it that way. I think it is terrible. I think I enjoyed the movie a lot more, but man, high frame rate should just not be in theaters. I hated it. Like, keep it for video games. I also rewatched Alien in preparation for tonight's episode, but I'll kind of leave my thoughts on that and the sequel to when we get into the review discussion.
All right, so I think it is that time, the time I've been waiting for 4 years. Let's get into 1986 Aliens. We'll get into the trailer, then come back with the synopsis and first experiences.
You're going out there to destroy them.
That's the plan.
All right, I'm in.
The first time she survived the most terrifying creature in the universe, she thought the nightmare was over.
Something under the floor.
It hadn't even begun.
Coming straight for us.
That's inside the room.
Sigourney Weaver, Aliens, the new movie. This time, it's war.
Aliens was written and directed by James Cameron, and the story is as follows. 57 years after surviving a harrowing attack aboard her space vessel, Officer Ripley awakens from hypersleep to the knowledge that the exo-moon that was once host to numerous alien eggs is now the site of a fully functional terraforming colony. But after contact is lost with said colony, Ripley accompanies a platoon of colonial marines hell-bent on laying waste to whatever threat stands in their way. Or so they thought. The aliens infesting the colony make quick work of the colonial marines, leaving Ripley to take matters into her own hands. Armed with a pulse rifle and a flamethrower duct taped together, she descends into the depths of hell to put an end to the alien threat once and for all.
That's literally the entire movie.
Yeah, well, I wanted to give an actual synopsis, just to, put it all together,
Yeah,
Mike.
jeez.
Okay, fair.
So we know where we're going to start. Is this your first time seeing this movie? Or is this just a VHS classic that you own in every type of media? You just get off the old Colonel Hicks and Ripley and just their amazing relationship. Colton, we'll start with you. Is this your first time seeing this?
So it is my first time with an asterisk. The first time I've seen any of these movies, it was at a New Year's Eve party that I was attending with a couple of my friends. And people were kind of having drinks. But eventually, like, a kind of a fight broke out between the host and his girlfriend, and it was just very awkwardly on in the background the entire time. So, yeah. So the first time I ever saw Aliens 1 through 4, all of them, because it started at something like 6 o'clock in the evening and just played all night long, was on TV with loads of commercials, consuming drinks and barely paying attention to it. So I'd say this was the first time I actually sat down and like gave it its due, to kind of assess like, oh, is this as good as what everybody says?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. What about you, Mike?
Oh my God, no. I've seen this like, I don't know, 30 times in my life. It's like you said, Ro, it was like the VHS classic. I feel like it used to come on like ASN and Bravo and stuff all the time, like every 6 months. So, And then, of course, we had the, like, Alien quadrilogy on DVD, which was, like, in the 2000s, like, the hot, like, box set to own. Like, oh my god, look what I have. I have the Alien quadrilogy, like...
Oh, yeah.
You know, come over to my place and watch it. So, yeah. I had a roommate who bought that as soon as it came out. Or maybe it wasn't as soon as it came out. She had it, she owned it. And we used to just put it on all the time when we were smoking up and, like, doing other shit. So, yeah, I've seen it, like, a million times. But I actually haven't watched it in a bunch of years. So it was nice to sit down and rewatch it for this. And I wanted to rewatch it, like, a couple years ago, but I knew we were going to end up doing it where we did the first one. So, yeah, I didn't do that. Jill, what about you? Experiences with this?
So yeah, I'm terrible, and I had only seen Prometheus and Covenant, but both
Nice.
like
Wow.
20 times each because my husband is obsessed with the Alien series, and like every other day he puts on fucking Prometheus. So I know those two movies like the back of my hand, but I hadn't seen like the originals or anything. I also watched it with him, which was a cool experience because he's really into it and kind of explained a bunch of stuff to me. So yeah, it was really nice to like go back in time and kind of watch those after seeing Prometheus and Covenant. What about you, Rowan?
Yeah, this is my first time seeing it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh my god.
I think I've seen this one out more than any of the Aliens movies. I own this on DVD. I own this in individual Blu-ray. I own this in the Blu-ray version of the quadrilogy, like the really nice one that's got like the box for the set, and then, you know, it's like sleeves and pictures.
Yeah,
and
that's the one.
booklets. Yeah. I own 2 copies of this on VHS. I've got the theatrical and the director's cut. Yeah, so you could say I've seen this before. This was like an iconic movie when I was a kid. I think this was the first Alien movie I had ever seen as a kid, if I recall correctly. I also remember, like, my best friend when I was like under 10 had all the action figures from this, and he actually created a paper mache like play thing for the figures, and it was like the terraforming colony and everything. So yeah, I've seen this. So yeah, it's time to get into the meat and potatoes. All right, sweethearts, you know the drill. Favorite scene and or favorite kill, and we'll start with you, Mike.
Oh, thank you. I can tell you're about to skip over me. Okay, listen, I am a basic ass bitch, but we all know, first of all, that I love my final girls. So that needs to be said right off the bat. And who is one of the, OG best final girls but Ellen Ripley herself? But one of my favorite tropes in any, like, horror movie or thriller or, like, I guess sci-fi or whatever, although more just in straight up horror, is the final girl gearing up for her ultimate showdown.
Oh, yeah.
So that, like, scene where Ripley is, like, getting herself ready and the countdown is going on and she's like, I gotta go, and she's like, getting all the weapons ready and, like, the steam is blowing everywhere and, it's like sweaty and, it's like, oh, you got that, like, white knuckle, like, oh my god, it's gonna happen, like, this is it, like, it's just her and them, and that's 100% my favorite scene. I just always love it. I don't know, maybe I love that trope so much partially because of this, like, this in, like, the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, because it happens a couple times in those. So yeah, I definitely, this is just one of my favorite versions of that.
Well, and it's like, it's the Ellen Ripley version of, like, the Rambo suit up.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, right? Like, Rambo's also a final girl, like, clearly. But I don't know, it's always better when a woman is doing it.
And there's gotta be like some sort of connection anyway, because I didn't even know until this watch, because I've seen the first Rambo a lot, but none of the other, like, I've only seen the other ones once, but I didn't realize that Cameron did the second Rambo, like, he wrote it.
Yeah, he wrote it, and I think it was, like, that was one of the reasons why he got this, maybe?
Yeah.
I feel like I read that somewhere, yeah. Yeah, I mean, listen, it's the same thing, like, one of my other favorite action movies, Commando, which, shut up Colton, I would give 5 stars on Letterboxd if I log it.
Can't wait
Arnold
for the
Schwarzenegger.
hot 2-star review of that. Your other favorite.
And,
action
same
movie.
thing, and I think that's why. I think Arnold Schwarzenegger made a really good final girl in that movie, and he does the same thing. I love that good gear up for the final battle. But what about you, Jill?
I have like kind of a tie between Burke dying because he was such a fucking asshole, and when he finally died, I was like, yeah, good riddance, get out of here, bye. But also when Gorman and Vasquez had like their little sacrificial like death together, I thought that was really cute, I guess, and I really liked Vasquez's character, so
Yeah,
I thought that was cute, I guess, in a disgusting way. What about you, Colton?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and pick 2 as well. My favorite kill, even though I guess it's not a straight up kill, is when Bishop gets ripped in half, like by the alien queen at the end. That's so gnarly, and just like in this world where kind of the synthetic beings or whatever they call them, the androids essentially, where they almost have like milk in their veins that
Milky
it looks like
innards.
It's so like off-putting, especially like all the like little beads or the way they attach and whatnot. It's really cool. So I thought that was a really cool kill. Most of the times, kills don't really stick out to me too much in these movies, but yeah, that was gnarly. And
this shot was beautiful of that, like the way it kind of like everything else was like very close up and stuff, and then all of a sudden it's like you get this like huge ass shot of like
big wide shot,
this huge massive thing just ripping them in half. It's like, oh my god, it's like shocking.
Yeah, and it's very evocative of the first movie as well, when like the xenomorph comes out of like the shadows, kind of like unfurls as well, but it's like the queen underneath the ship. Like it's very cool. I really like that. I would say my favorite scene overall is probably when Newt's in the water and Ripley and is it Hicks? Is that the name of?
Yeah.
Yeah. When they're trying to like cut through the grates of the floor to try and get her, because even though I haven't seen this movie, completely like 100% attention wise, there's certain shots and sequences obviously that I've seen dozens of times on best of lists or in art and posters and whatnot. And obviously that scene of like Newt with like the tail coming up out of the water behind her is like completely iconic. So when that came up, like getting it, like the full scale of it with like the suspense and the dread and like the motion trackers of it coming towards her and like, the ticking clock element of it, it really worked for me. And I really enjoyed Ripley and Newt's like mother-daughter relationship in this. Like I liked it. So yeah, that was probably my favorite scene. I mean, I'm kind of with Mike though as well. Like I really love the suit up scene and the ensuing action after that point.
Yeah.
But, yeah. What about you, Rowan?
I'm just really thankful. I was really worried someone was gonna take mine, and then I'd have to pick something else, which I could easily. So my favorite scene and favorite kill kind of go together because they're kind of in the same arc. My favorite scene is, they've locked themselves in the medical bay and Hicks is checking the motion sensor. They can't figure out where the aliens are. And he like looks in the grates on the ceiling and you get the shot of all the aliens like climbing in the wall. And I just think the like suspense and like the horror of that is so well done. That's like peak Alien to me. That's the most Alien in all the Alien movies for me. And then my favorite kill is when we have Hudson, Bill Paxton, get taken down from the floor and killed through the floor, which almost is like, this kind of Jaws moment where the aliens are also bursting through the floor and just dragging him down slowly, and he's screaming and they're trying to save him. And I just love the suspense built in that scene. It's got like the gorgeous, like the red emergency lighting, just like slowly strobing and lighting everything. And it's just chef's kiss. I love it.
That's so poetic, Rowan. How's that cider treating you?
Oh, it's fantastic. Fantastic.
It is 100% coursing through his veins right now.
Yeah.
I just have a sort of general question I want to get into because Rowan's scene kind of reminded me of this. Did you think by having like, I don't know, half a dozen xenomorphs on screen at once and the fact that they had to do all these costumes, Did it kind of take away from it a little bit? Like, I thought the xenomorphs looked a little bit dopey in this one compared to the original. Like, they looked a little bit bulkier. Like, their heads seemed to be, like, a little bit shorter. Like, I don't know what it was. Just seeing them, they looked goofy in this. And, I mean, the xenomorph was never goofy in the original. I mean, other than the ultimate ending when it falls out of the ship, of course. But, I mean, you know, up until that point, it wasn't goofy. Like, do you think it looks goofy?
Yes and no. There's some shots, and I'm thinking probably exactly what you're thinking of. Kind of when Ellen's kind of confronting the queen alien.
Yeah.
And then you have like kind of these warrior aliens like stepping out of the corridor, but they're kind of walking like humans, like they're just on two legs walking, which makes them not scary at all, because you're like, oh yeah, this is just a guy in a suit standing there looking like some alien from Star Wars or something, just like you said.
It looked like a Cenobite or something, like coming out of this, you know? That's what it kind of reminded me of.
Yeah, to me, it's always, the aliens always work for me, like when they're on all fours and they have that animalistic kind of feeling and approach. Because to me, even though I think like the one thing I really like about this movie compared to the first one is like, you know, James really explores like how intelligent the aliens are in this, and how, you know, they're not just like stupid, like mindless predators, that they're very intelligent predators with strategy and you know, just high concept thinking. Yeah, that's why I think they work better when they look more like animals, just because it gives that feeling of like kind of like, you know, like an actual like monster movie, like
yeah, it's probably a choice, because what you were saying where Cameron gives them like more intelligence and whatnot in the movie, you're probably supposed to feel like it's almost like two groups of Marines going against each other in a way. Like, obviously this is a xenomorph version of the Marines, you know, like they're formulating strategies and, you know, coming at them from different directions and flanking them and whatnot. For me personally, it was just, I don't know, they didn't seem as scary this time. I don't know what it is. Maybe it was even like the Marines themselves weren't as scared, or at least they were kind of having like quippy one-liners and stuff, like when they were killing them and whatnot, like shotgunning one in the head or running it over or throwing a grenade at it. Like, it was just, obviously a lot of them were getting mowed down, but it wasn't as tense, I would say, as the first one, which I guess it winds up being like that's the pivot from a horror movie to more of like an action horror movie, I guess.
So I am kind of curious, I guess, because it would kind of lead into some more discussion in that terms. I know, Mike, you said it seemed to the movie seemed to last forever. Were you watching the theatrical or the director's cut?
Oh, it was the director's cut.
It was
like it was literally like, I think almost 3 hours long.
Yeah, the director's cut, I think.
I watched it by accident. I didn't realize that's what I was watching until I was halfway through it, and I literally had to stop because I was falling asleep, and I was like, I'm watching two movies right now. I was like thinking I'm gonna watch this before bed, and I like threw it on, and I was like, oh my god, I gotta watch this the rest of it tomorrow.
So this is where I'm really a toss-up, because there's sometimes that I argue the theatrical is probably my favorite cut, and then
like you did with All of Us.
Yeah.
So that's what I watched.
Yeah, and I'm assuming, like, Jill, did you watch this on Disney?
I actually got it on Amazon Prime for some reason, even though we have the actual like DVD, but it's a DVD, not a Blu-ray, so I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. I won't judge you this time. So you probably watched the theatrical also.
Was it 3 hours long, or was it 2:15?
I think it was 2:15.
Yeah.
I just asked that because I do know, you know, kind of where I'm actually looking to critique it this time. Watching the director's cut, the tones are very different, which I never noticed, where the theatrical cut really makes it more of an action sci-fi, where the director's cut adds, I find, a lot more of the like the tension building and kind of the world building. I was thinking when we were talking about the like intelligence of the aliens, like one of the big scenes that gets added back in the director's cut is there's more scenes with more of the sentry guns. And it basically is like the aliens figuring out these sentry guns and how they work and how to, like, you know, they attack a set of them and then they're like, oh, okay, so we need to do something a little different this time. And it just shows you like how they think and how they're a little more intelligent, which I think makes them scarier, which I kind of feel in the, like I said, I like the theatrical when I want to watch it. And I'm like, listen, I just want to get into it. I want to get the Marines going. And of course, a lot of the director's cut stuff is at the beginning because we build out the whole Ripley as a mother. That's pretty much everything that's added. I don't know, Colton or Jill, if you've ever seen the director's cut, but you know, they add in a scene of Ripley finding out her daughter died because she was in cryo sleep for so long. We see a picture of her daughter, which is kind of funny because the picture is actually a picture of Sigourney Weaver's mother in real life.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because in the picture she's like older than Sigourney Weaver is in the movie, because she's been alive for longer than like Sigourney's character was out of cryo. Yeah,
and like I said, it kind of built the tension, I think, out more. There's a lot more to do with the company and Burke and like the distrust and like why he's not to be trusted. So like I said, I think it's kind of like what
the like capitalist critique.
Yeah, is more heavy in there. Where, like I said, the theatrical is also good because it's just, you know, it's like, all right, fuck it, let's just get into it. You know, let's just blast some aliens.
It's funny you say that because I still think this movie kind of has the same issue I have with the original Alien, which is after about an hour into this movie, it bogs down for about 20 to 30 minutes, and it's just a bunch of people talking in boardrooms and kind of doing science and stuff. And it's exactly what the first Alien does when I watched it the other night as well, where it was funny going into this when I heard like all my buddies say, like, this is a non-stop action movie, just guns blazing all the time, like they never stop. And I'm like, bro, they stop. Like, it stops like dead in its tracks for 20 to 30 minutes. Enough that I was like kind of bored and found myself kind of drifting towards my phone a little bit, which I would have never expected from this Aliens movie.
Yeah.
So the fact that you're saying the director's cut has even more of that, I wonder if it would work even less for me or not. I'm not sure. I like kind of what you're saying with the, building the mythology of it. But then I also kind of think when you kind of explain your monsters more and more, they kind of also get less scary. So there's an aspect of that where I'm not 100% sure. It's intriguing, and also, I don't know, at the same time, it's kind of worrisome, I guess. Did anybody, like, everybody loves this movie, right? Like, you know, I don't love this movie. Everybody does. But, like, did anyone else get bored at any point? Like, am I just crazy? Like, it literally bogs down to a full fucking halt at an hour into this movie, like for 20 or 30 minutes. Like, I'm not crazy. It was, you know, I understand if you grew up with it and you like love the movie and you love all of it, you're kind of like waiting for the next great scene. But as someone watching it the first time and that has already seen Alien, so a lot of this we already know. Yeah. It was just like, bro, I already know this. You know, I don't need 20 minutes of this.
I always say that every time I watch this, even though I enjoy it, that it is, even the non-director's cut version is too long.
It's really don't know what to do with you two guys right now.
Me neither. I thought it was fine. I was even thinking about it. I was like, I think it's perfectly
paced,
I can love a
movie
actually.
And still think it's too long.
The thing is like there are aspects of this movie where I should have found it boring. Like, you know, I'm not just talking about like characters talking make the movie boring. Like, I thought Ripley kind of dealing with like her nightmares and PTSD and, you know, basically having that hysterical woman trope and stuff at the beginning of the movie was like fascinating. I really enjoyed that. It was more so after the movie shifted into like this crazy action movie. Obviously, I understand there has to be like ebbs and flows. You can't have a nonstop action movie, but it literally goes like action tension for like 20 minutes or so, and then it's just like literally like nothing for another 20 or 30 minutes, just people talking in boardrooms. And it's a lot of like suits too, right? It's a lot of the corporate guy talking, and you know, and like the colonel is knocked out and what happened to him, or the lieutenant. It's just like, it's a bunch of stuff I just don't really care about, I guess.
I don't know. I think as much Paul Reiser as I can get, I'm taking. Paul Reiser's probably one of my favorite things about this movie. He's so like sleazeball and just, I mean, I love Paul Reiser anyway, but.
And you guys thought his death was good? Like, I know Jill pointed it out. It was just, it all happens off screen. Right, like it's like the xenomorph jumps out at him. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any complaints about it. I mean, I think it's pretty comparable to, you know, most of the deaths in the original Alien. I mean, I think one of the issues that I see, especially with the later movies, is the more we want to see people, like the actual aliens killing people, like the sillier it kind of gets. So
I can see that, yeah.
I almost feel like you have to have that cutaway where it's like the terror of what you're not seeing.
It's just interesting to have the guy who like loves blood and gore on the podcast being happy that they cut away and don't show any of the deaths. That's all.
Listen, this movie...
Bro contains multitudes, okay?
Yeah, I'm a multifaceted
It's just
guy.
something I noticed, that's all. Like, it's similarly in, like, it just feels like I'm just picking on Jill because I'm naming another one of her favorite scenes. Vasquez was one of my favorite characters, for example. Like, I loved how she had the big mounted machine gun. I love that. It was probably just like almost like an easy rig camera rig that they, like, remade to work with a big old prop. Like, that was so cool. And then the fact that she just gets blown up with the other guy in the, you know, I understand it's supposed to be like an epic sacrificial death of like the grenade explosion, but I don't know, I just wanted something way more. I wanted her to have more of like the blaze of glory. Like,
she did deserve more, you're right, yeah.
It was just,
Shout
I
out to
love
Jeanette
that character
Goldstein.
was like literally one of my favorite parts of the movie, and I was just like, oh, she like goes out like just really quick. It's like a second, blow up, gone, you know, moving on. But
And I will say that brings me to my problem with every movie. Which is that it needs less men and more women.
I noticed they had like 3 or 4 women in this though, which was
but
a lot more than the
really,
first one.
there's only 2 that have like more than 2 lines.
Fair.
It is the 80s. I did like the pilot chick who and her death was pretty cool. That was like gnarly, it was close to being one of my favorite scenes because she's coming in, you know she's gonna go down, and you have that
exactly, yeah.
I was gonna say one thing I will say that always amazes me about this movie and is like the actual like sound effect, sound design of this. It's fantastic. This is where we kind of get the iconic sounds the aliens make. Like the first one never really explored, you know, what these aliens sound like when they're exploding and getting shot at, and what we're gonna see for the
there's
rest
not
of
too many exploding aliens and like plasma rifles and shit in the first one.
Yes.
So,
but
you know,
like I
there.
do love the sounds they make. And, you know, I found like even with the like the tracker, I guess is what they call it, which I think, you know, when we had Brad on, when we talked about the first one, and just the invention of that tracker being like one of the greatest like movie gadgets, gimmicks, it really works because all the scenes they use that in it, it's fantastic for building tension. But just like that very, you know, like generic blip of radar, just kind of like bleep bleep, like, and it just works. Like, I think the sound works in this movie amazingly. I already see Colton wants to argue with me, so
yeah, I just don't know what to say about it because there was loads of instances in this movie where I noticed like stock sound effects. So then I wind up going like, okay, is this movie old enough where they actually created the sound effects that then we wound up using as stock sound effects? But like things when people were getting like, when they were breaking something or like getting thrown against the wall, there's a lot of like whoosh, 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 you know, people like punching and getting thrown through the air. It seems like kind of goofy. And you're talking about like the clicking sound of like the motion tracker. That was like so pervasive throughout like that one scene of the movie, or not the one scene, but the sequence, like when they're going underneath, I guess, the plant or whatever, you know, kind of going into the hive, that the motion tracker was carrying over into scenes without the motion tracker. Like it was carrying over into the scenes when the people were just watching the feeds, which is like, okay, once again, maybe the audio is coming through, but it was like so rough that I wound up pausing the movie like a couple of times and basically being like, is my audio off in this movie? Like, is there something wrong? Because I honestly didn't know if it was like a, you know, like kind of an issue where it was like all staticky or whatever. Like every second it was like cutting through the score. It was cutting through everything. With once again, it builds tension, but it was the type of thing where I honestly didn't know if there was like something wrong with the copy on Disney Plus or not. So I get that it builds tension, but also it felt like it was so pervasive that even in scenes that weren't supposed to have tension, they just kept it there, almost like they just dragged out the sound that was supposed to go every second. So, you know, it is diegetic sound in a way, but then it also winds up being further than that, where it winds up, I was like, oh, is this part of the score? And then eventually the score is by itself and it's not part of it.
It's kind of like it becomes like the heartbeat in the movie, right? Like it's just kind of there pulsing the whole time.
Which, once again, I like conceptually. It was just kind of like too much on the surface where I honestly, like, it was blowing out dialogue and blowing out stuff like that. It was mixed too loud where I honestly thought there was like an issue with the Disney Plus thing I was watching. Like I paused it multiple times. Like I thought it was like
it was also on
Prime,
Prime,
too staticky.
So I think it's
the
same
thing.
Yeah, I heard it too.
It's mixed. It's mixed poorly. I don't know what it is. I'm not trying to be too down on the movie. It's not like I hate this movie or anything. It's just, the specific points you're bringing up are the specific.
I was gonna say, you're just tearing
with.
Down everyone's very specific things that they like.
Yeah, it's just like that's literally like my negative points of the movie, right? Like we can talk about the face hugger scene and with Ripley and Newt if we want, where there's two of those. I love that scene. That's a great scene. But just the specific things you're calling out are things I just.
That is a great
scene.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the face huggers are the truly terrifying creation of the whole alien world.
Yeah. Especially in this one. Yeah.
They do a really good job. That scene you're talking about, just, that scene always creeps me out. Face huggers in general creep me out. I always think maybe that's why I hate spiders so much, because they just remind me of giant spiders and, creepy giant spiders and also creepy hands.
Well, I think it's a really good scene as well because it shows that like the protagonist, like Ripley, she's kind of trying everything and like exhausting all of the ideas I have in my head as an audience member. It's like, oh, fight back, or oh, try and break the glass, oh, trying to get through the door. Then finally it's like, oh, this is actually a really smart way to like alert everybody, like, the setting off the fire alarm system. And also just the face huggers are so terrifying just because like we know they have the acid blood as well. So I'm like, okay, this isn't gonna go well. Like if someone tries to take it off when it's on her face or something, right? And then the tail kind of wrapping tighter and tighter around her neck, like all that.
Yeah,
shit
and it's
so
like,
good.
Is she gonna choke to death or is she gonna get acided to death? Is acid
Exactly.
a verb? Anyway, it is now.
I'm curious, Jill, what you thought of Weaver's overall performance. Now I know, she was nominated for Best Actress, which was the first time someone was nominated from like a sci-fi action movie.
Wow. I never knew that. That's crazy.
Yeah, I thought she did an amazing job with really cementing that character of Ripley. And the whole movie had this really nice feminist lens. And she kind of was the voice of reason a lot of times, like who are the real monsters, us or them. And I don't know, I really like the motherly aspect of her. Like she was the one who really reached out to Newt and trying to get everyone to stay on task and everything. But I thought she was really powerful. And I was also thinking about this because she's also an Avatar and another James Cameron movie. And I was actually like writing down a lot of the similarities that were in Avatar. So her being in the movie, but also that like robot suit she gets into. Yeah. They have like the exact same one in Avatar. And I was thinking about that a lot. And the military.
We do love a callback.
The colonizing. Yeah, there's a lot of similarities there, but I think she did a really good job. I'm sorry. And then she went on, obviously, to do a lot of other cool stuff. So, it's well deserved. But yeah, I really liked her performance. And I really like
Avatar when she did a lot of cool stuff.
I really, she's a really iconic character. What else do you want me to say?
She definitely was in another James Cameron movie that wasn't as good, but thank you for bringing up the bay and the the loader machine that she uses, because I was gonna say that's probably the most iconic thing to come out of this film. And it looks fantastic. Like this movie does look pretty good for its time.
It does, yeah.
And I'm a big fan. Like there's a lot of scenes with like painted backgrounds and stuff. And I've been on record, like I love when movies do that. 'Cause this isn't a movie that's like, 2015 and it looks like shit when they could just like, CGI it properly. Like this is like actual, handmade sets, miniatures, and using like perspective and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, just that whole scene, I was laughing at myself when that scene comes on, when she's calling the queen alien bitch, because I like know it word for word, and I'm just loud.
I was like, that is literally my favorite quote of all time. One of the first things I did when, so like my roommate that I mentioned earlier, who had the quadrilogy that we used to watch all the time, when I first got my first iPhone and figured out how to make my own ringtones, the first thing I did was make a ringtone that was just her going, "Get away from her, you bitch!" So, like, normally I would have my phone on vibrate all the time, but, like, sometimes I'd be, like, standing in line at, like, Old Navy with, like, 20 moms on either side of me, like, waiting to check out my cardigan and, like, pair of jeans. And all of a sudden, just repeated over and over from my pocket, you just hear, "Get away from her, you bitch! Get away from her, you bitch!" And it would just keep repeating until I answered the phone. I'm like, oh, but I just love that quote so much. Yeah.
There's a lot of like one-liners and memes. One more thing, my husband, he was watching it with me, and he was like, "That's where Molly Weasley gets the line from Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Like, they stole it from this movie." And yeah, I have to agree.
What line is that?
The "Get away from her, you bitch."
Oh, I don't know. I've never seen Harry Potter.
That's
so.
a big steal. I never realized they stole
that.
Like, wow. Yeah,
Straight
I mean,
up.
that is like the iconic line from this movie, like, for sure.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, I was yelling it at the screen while she said it. That's how much I just love that.
I scrubbed it back about 7 times and rewatched it. And then so I was watching it the first time I was watching it on my TV. And then when I finished it, unfortunately, I was watching it on my laptop because I was lying in bed because I was exhausted after shoveling 5 times yesterday.
Oh,
but,
brutal.
like, literally, I had my, like, laptop on my lap, and I, like, grabbed my phone, and just, like, when I repeated it for, like, the 7th time, just, like, was taking a video of my laptop to send to my friend and be like, "Look what I'm watching." Like, it's just one of those lines that, like, you just send it to people and stuff, and, like, it's always, like, a fun thing to hear. It's always a very welcome quote, as far as I'm concerned.
Now, Mike, on Twitter, just, going back to when you were watching it, you kind of pointed out the appearance of the Alien Queen, and I was just curious, do you like the design of it, or how do you feel about the Alien Queen?
I fucking love it. I'm so glad you asked me about that.
Yeah.
Yes,
okay,
ahead. So I will say, so that was one of my points. You may disagree. As soon as I saw the Alien Queen for the first time when I was young, I thought a version of this, but not this exact one. But in today's parlance, I was like, she is serving cunt. The Alien Queen is so fucking cunty. She just, like, comes out and, like, drops the fucking sack balloon off of her stomach. And when she comes out and, like, she stands up and, like, strikes a pose, and I'm like, God damn, she's got that big ol' fucking flared out head. Just so regal and queenly. And I'm like, she is like the drag queen. Like, she's coming out. She's doing her, when she comes out, when Ripley has the suit on, like, I think they're both doing their, like, drag race lip sync for your life. Like, they both come out, like, wearing, they're doing their runway. They're in their, like, best outfits. I was like, she's so cunty. She just, like, comes out and is like, "Oh, look at me," and just, like, the way she moves and, like, her pose and, like, the head, I just loved it. Why do you disagree? You obviously don't like her design.
I'm a little bit more mixed on it. I do think it's a very cool design. Like, it's a striking silhouette, I guess.
I liked it's all about, she gives a silhouette, yes.
Yeah, I liked it better when she was hooked up to whatever you call it, the egg depositor part of her.
The milking machine. I think of, like Roger on American Dad when they're literally milking them and they have them hooked up to the machine and they're just, like, pumping them, and I'm like, it's like that, but it's like this queen alien.
All right, I liked her a bit better when she was hooked up to the milking machine, I guess. But it was just something as I was watching it, and, like, maybe Rowan knows a little bit more about this, but, like, was it... How was it animated? Was it, like, stop motion? Was it a person in a suit? Was it puppeteering? Because there was, like, a herky-jerkiness to it that didn't seem like an actual person, so I'm just curious.
So it was most of it was puppeteering. It was took 18 people to puppeteer it.
Gotcha.
And I had read that,
I mean, it was huge, though. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it was massive. I had read that they had a lot of issues with the scene when it came up the elevator, because they couldn't fit it in the elevator. So when it's in the elevator, they actually had to take the tail and like the whole back end off of it. So it was just the front of it just to fit in the elevator. I agree with Mike. Like I thought it looked, I think the alien's the best looking alien that in any of the movies. Like this queen is fantastic. And the whole scene with the, I guess, milking machine, we're naming it now. But just like when Ripley comes into that room and we kind of get like,
I call it the queen reveal.
The queen reveal, but like where we don't see the queen at first, we just see like that sack laying the eggs in it. Like that looks so awesome. And then it just kind of, then we get the reveal. Amazing. I think it's great.
Yeah, I think it's really good, and I like the Rock'em Sock'em robot fight, there at the end. But
oh, it's great.
It was just something I was curious about. Like as I was watching it, there was like it wasn't like fluid, like it didn't feel like a creature to me. Like it felt like almost like that it was a miniature that someone was puppeteering. But it's cool to hear that it was actually like to scale and took 18 different puppeteers.
I just have to say though, like all of the no matter what, I'm very glad that all of the Twitter gays agreed with me because everyone was like, "It's Mother!" Like everyone was like loving it.
Oh my! That Rock'em Sock'em robot fight. I did think it was a little interesting that there's absolutely no score, and that it does go on for like a minute, and it's just like grunts and like whooshes of machinery back and forth. Like it did feel like there was supposed to be like an epic score being played there. For an action movie, for a horror, you would cut it all out, kind of the way they did it, and make it a little bit more visceral, I guess. But
yeah, you expect the like hacky like Harry Potter hackorama score to be honest, but they don't.
Okay, I don't expect the Harry Potter music to kick in, but just something a little bit exciting. It like once again, I do like it, but it was a weird choice. Like I did notice that there was absolutely no score during that moment, and it wasn't like necessarily because like there was any aspect of space open or anything, or like there was supposed to be like a no sound or anything. It was just a choice, right?
Yeah, I don't know if that was purposeful. I do know the little bit of the reading I've done on this. I know that the score was a big issue because they didn't finish cutting this movie until a week before it went into theaters.
Interesting.
And the guy, I can't think of his name, but the guy did the score, like, has gone on record and just said it was like a shit show because they were like, hey, you've got like less than a week to do music for this. Put some music on it.
Yeah, it just felt like it was missing something to me. Like it was still epic and it was still like a good fight, and once again I enjoyed it. It was just like I felt like it could have been punched up a little bit. No pun intended. Also, how do you feel about Ripley's ability to hold on against the vacuum of space?
Oh my god, I was like, god damn her arms. Like,
yeah, I know. And it's funny, like the close up on her arm too, like she looks like she has like big biceps and she's very muscular throughout the movie, but just the angle they choose on her arm, it makes her have like little spaghetti arms, and I don't know what happened because Sigourney did get like a little bit beefed up for this.
Oh,
so
for sure, yeah.
So it was just funny, like as I was watching it, I was like, obviously everyone knows nowadays, the vacuum of space, you just explode, right? Like, but it was just so funny. It was like from a more simple time, just Sigourney hanging on against the vacuum of space, just like a bicep curl essentially.
Her elbow,
right? Yeah.
That was really only my nitpick in this watch. Is I kept thinking, I'm like the space. I was like, yeah, like the minute you hit like the nothingness of space or it hits you, I'm like, you just die, right? Like
that's it. Yeah.
You don't climb a ladder and then like push a button, wait for it to close, and you're like, phew, that was a close one.
Also, doesn't she just kick off the alien queen? Like it's grabbing onto her foot, right? Like in her shoe. Does her shoe even fall off, or does she just kick it off?
I feel like her shoe fell off.
Okay, all right. That's
but
a little
so it's very Cinderella.
Yeah. I was also thinking the same thing.
Yeah. And these are like funny like nitpicks, but they are things that like when I was watching that are just like, oh, this is a little bit strange, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I did wonder on this watch too, like James Cameron, does he have some mummy issues going on here? There's a lot of like mothering themes. You have this like mother versus mother going on.
I called it Mother's Mothering.
Mother's Mothering. I just thought it was like an interesting angle to take. Maybe because I like the alien so much. I'm like kind of sympathetic to the queen alien. I'm like, it's just technically they're just like an animal. They're a species trying to survive Ripley just doesn't give a shit. She's like, annihilate these fuckers. You know, she's just trying to protect her babies. You know, who doesn't want a pet alien? So, I only had a couple other notes on this. I did want to say, like, overall, like, I thought the cast was pretty good. You know, we get Michael Biehn, who also in The Terminator, who originally, this movie was shot with James Remar as Hicks.
Oh, he's so good.
He did scenes, like, they started shooting this film with him, but at the time, he was a raging drug addict, and they had to fire him. So he says this is his biggest regret, like, not being in this film. But I mean, like, Bill Paxton, who, you know, has been killed by an alien and a predator, so he does have that under his belt. Obviously, I already said, like, Al Matthews that plays Apone, like, I love him as a character. I thought it was kind of cool. I was reading about him. He's actually, like, in real life, he was the first black person to be awarded a sergeant position in the military in the Vietnam War.
Oh, interesting.
So he was an actual sergeant.
That's cool.
I thought that was pretty cool. What I thought was even cooler is the kind of the cast tales. They shot this at Pinewood Studios in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
You mean they didn't shoot it in a spaceship?
No, they didn't go to space. Lance Henriksen talks about that they were actually across the street shooting Full Metal Jacket. And he talks about that, like, after wrapping, they would have, like, parties together. And he was saying how intense it was to have, like, Al Matthews and, you know, what's his name that plays the sergeant in Full Metal Jacket, just because they were both actual military sergeants. And he just said, like, it was awesome to see those two get together and, like, they're just actual military badasses. But, yeah, that's all I really had to say about that. Lance Henriksen, I can't, you know, he's always my bishop. I like him better than I like, you know, the one from the first one.
He's
Ash.
way better, than Ash.
Which is interesting because he didn't want to do the movie. He was scared this was going to ruin his career. I had read that he said if this movie flopped, he was going to quit acting because he was tired of being a journeyman actor. And then, of course, this did the total opposite of flopping. Mm-hmm. The only last thing I had, which is the most important question when we talk about this movie.
I can't believe you just said something about the cast and didn't even mention our girl Jeanette Goldstein. I'm divorcing you. I'm divorcing you. We're divorced.
Well, that's where you're supposed to come in, and
I did, and I'm
talk about Vasquez. Also in Terminator 2.
Yes, also in Terminator 2. I think she also did a voice in Avatar, but I don't know. Maybe I feel like I read that somewhere.
Let's keep the Avatar.
Let's keep talking about
going.
Avatar. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't seen it. Obviously, as we've
she's also in
in
Titanic. So
Titanic, and she was also in Near Dark.
Yeah,
which
another
James
Bill Paxton.
Cameron, which is also Bill Paxton, which is not a James Cameron movie, but his, I guess they weren't married at the time, or soon to be wife, Catherine Bigelow, aka soon to be, you know, Oscar winner Catherine Bigelow. And by soon to be, I mean it was like 20 years later, but still. Also, Near Dark, amazing. Everyone should watch it. I'm trying to remember if but you know, and then Catherine Bigelow also did Strange Days, which Cameron co-wrote, etc. But anyway, yeah, Jeanette Goldstein's in like all over all of his stuff.
So yeah, my big question for the episode was, you know, this is in the talks when we talk about greatest sequels of all time. This is kind of this, Terminator 2, Empire Strikes Back. I looked it up, like pretty much every major publication, this is in the top 3. Whenever they talk about greatest sequels, greatest sci-fi horror, greatest action sci-fi, greatest, you know, action horror, any of those combinations, this is always near the top of the list. I'm just wondering how this holds up as a sequel for you guys. You know, is this, in your opinion, the best sequel? Is there better sequels? What do you think, Jill?
Well, I haven't seen the original, so I feel like I'm not qualified to talk about this. But in seeing other sequels from the same franchise, especially with this being from the 80s and the ones that I have seen being more recent, I think it does hold up. In talking about other sequels from other movies, I still think it holds up. Even though I haven't seen the original, I think it's a good standalone movie. What about you, Colton?
I kind of think this is just on the same level as the first one. I don't know if it's like a sequel that actually surpasses the original. Like, they're both very different movies. For me, where I go like sequels that are like obviously way better, like Mad Max Fury Road is way better than any of the other 3 Mad Max movies. Like Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the one from like 2014, is far superior than Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which is, sci-fi movie. But yeah, if you get really granular and you go, well, the best sci-fi action horror sequel, it's like, yeah, I can't think of any. But like off the top of my head, I wouldn't say, for me personally, that this is a sequel that supersedes the original. It's like similar to how like some people like The Godfather Part 2 better than Part 1. I'm not one of those people. I prefer The Godfather Part 1. This one is a little bit more, they're kind of on even footing for me. And I think it also just winds up being like, I have no nostalgia. I don't really have any love for the franchise. I think
I can tell
Alien and Aliens are probably better in my head than Prometheus. But I really like Prometheus as well. That's the thing that's weird. Like, Jill did a what the fuck. I don't know if she loves Prometheus.
I love Prometheus.
She just said she watched it 20 times.
Yeah.
I mean, that could be her husband watching it 20 times. She's stuck there. It doesn't mean she loves it.
In turn, I love it. Mm-hmm.
Like Alien Covenant's fucking horrible. So if you love that, then I mean you're lost. That's an awful movie. So that's the thing. Alien and Aliens is much better than Covenant. I really like Prometheus, but I haven't watched it in 10 years. I couldn't actually do a comparison to that. But yeah, in terms of best sequels of all time, I feel like if you gave me 10 minutes to do a bit of Googling, I could find better sequels, in my opinion.
Don't believe you.
It certainly wouldn't rank in the top 3 of my favorite sequels, that's for sure.
I mean, I feel sequels, I always, I'm basic. I always put the 3, Terminator 2, Empire Strikes Back, Aliens. This is always number 1 for me. I don't like Star Wars. I love Empire Strikes Back.
You like this better than Terminator 2?
I do like this better.
Okay.
Terminator 2 is always second for me.
Okay.
This is my number 1.
It would have been the other way around, yeah.
But I do love Terminator 2. I mean, they're very hard to
The Dark Knight is like a way better
terrible
sequel,
movie.
Batman Begins, like way amazing. Toy Story 3 is amazing. I did do a quick Google. For me personally, and this is a hot take, I don't really like the original Star Wars trilogy that much, and I loved Episode 7 when it came out, and I never knew what came afterwards. I did love Episode 7, so I mean that's a great sequel to me as well. So I don't know.
Which one is that? Is that like?
That's a sequel.
Like, what are they? I'm just like episode whatever. I don't know what any of these are. I'm like
just by the nature of being Episode 7, it's a sequel to 6 other movies. I mean, I'm just saying that.
Okay,
a lot of people prefer Evil Dead 2.
That's the Force Awakens,
right?
I think.
I prefer.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know why I'm asking because I don't.
Yeah, you don't know what I'm talking about anyway.
Yeah, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just like arguing now. I'm just being a contrarian.
I mean, you know what, Colton? At least we agree on one thing, and that's The Dark Knight's overrated. We agree on that. So I'm glad. Put it on the record. Anyway,
I don't condone that.
Did you guys have any other notes to talk about this, or are we ready to land the plane?
I was just gonna say we should compare Avatar.
Yeah,
I'm
we
just
should.
being a piece of shit.
Let's do a direct comparison: Avatar to Alien, and then Avatar 2 to Aliens.
Far superior Alien and Aliens.
I prefer Avatar 2 over all of those movies.
Oh, what a bad take!
Not in high frame rate.
What a
but,
terrible
I do prefer
take.
It.
I like Avatar 2. It's still a terrible take.
I don't really have any more notes for this movie. I mean, the thing is like it made me sound like I really dislike it, but it's just because I pushed back against the things was discussed. I think it's a great movie. I understand why people really like it. I think it just winds up being like, if you watch this in the time when I watched Jurassic Park as a kid, you would hold a lot of love for this movie, where I didn't watch it really until I was probably 25, right? Like,
fair.
So as a watching it this time as a first time watch, I just found a lot more issues with it, I guess. But yeah, it's still, it's worthy of like when people toss it around as a great sci-fi action horror movie. Now, is it a horror movie? I mean, we can get on that whole discussion, but I don't know. It's probably old hat at this point.
Well, let's land the plane, and let's get.
Wait, was Mike gonna say something?
Oh,
Sorry.
wait, sorry.
No, listen, I was just gonna say, because Ro texted and said, like, get your discussion of phallic symbols ready. And I think I wrote this back, but then I erased it because I didn't want to start getting into it in the
No,
chat.
please. Let's get into it a little bit. Let's get into it.
No, but I was just gonna say, it's when you're watching alien movies, it's not phallic symbols and stuff, it's like vaginal symbols and stuff. And it's all about the like secretions and the openings and eggs, and because they're like a matriarchal. I mean, at least in the first couple movies, it's very matriarchal. It's the queen, you know, it's especially, and now this one you don't get it as much because this one's very like kind of male coded because it's like military based instead of like kind of regular people on a ship. And all the imagery in the first one, like there's whole chapters in like horror film theory books about it, but like while there are like, you know, phallic aspects to it, I'm just like, come on. They even call them, they're even walking through these like long dark wet hallways and like literally calling it like secretions and like rubbing, you know, it's like, anyway, I just wanted to like call you out for expecting discussion of phallic imagery in an alien movie.
I mean, I still think there's a good amount in there. Like, just
there is,
like,
but like
the alien's like mouth, you know, the second mouth is like super penetrative, and same with like the face hugger when it has like the little thing that's
and the face hugger is like to me the most. But the face hugger is like, you know, it's everything
it's like
about it to me. But I just think like
very vaginal.
Very much.
There's just I don't know. There's a lot of like penetrative violation like in these movies as well, which is like I can see where it's coming from. And then I don't know, there's even like you go to like the shape of the xenomorph's like head shape. It's like, you know, quite phallic when like parts
I just think of like all of my favorite like kind of aesthetic moments are like the passageways and stuff, and that's all very much like coded in that way.
I do
coded CODED, not COATED.
Yeah, I was just
but also
say,
COATED.
I do enjoy the dark passages of this movie more than the first movie, where they're all like gross and like whatnot in this movie. I don't know what that says about me, but it's it was like interesting to watch. You know, it was good set design for sure.
Yeah, okay.
I will say on that point, I do like the themes of, you know, like matriarchy and mothers, and like you said, there is like this vaginal, you know, thing about it, but
every time you say vaginal Jill's face like just
I'm sorry.
drops.
I'm sorry.
But set against like that hyper masculine military like action movie, which I think
it's
is like an
capitalism
play.
And its opposite, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
The military is all like the capitalist, you know, machinery, which is very like penetrative.
That's a very good point.
And I was going to say, I guess really before we wrap it up, one thing I did forget to say was if you watch the director's cut of this is the movie. They actually say Ripley's first name. They say her name is Ellen Ripley. Which they don't do so in the first one.
Yeah, that was a choice though, right? On the screenplay side, where they didn't give anybody like first names really, just so anyone could be cast.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just a fun little fact. All right, well, let's land this plane and get to rating this. So if you're new to the program, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. So we are going to start with Jill, the first timer, because there's only 3 of us rating this, because we're not going to let Colton have a say. So,
this is my last show, everybody. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
So, Jill, what would you rate Aliens?
All right. Well, I'm going to give it a slay.
Fuck yeah.
I like
fuck yeah.
Fuck yeah. It's getting a slay for me. I love the cheesy 80s humor. I love Sigourney Weaver. She does a fantastic job. I love how feminine it can be. Like we talked about how maternal. We never talked about this, but I love the building of the hive structure.
Yeah.
I thought they did a really good job with that, with like the whole set and design. I think the xenomorphs look amazing and they're terrifying foes, and I would not want to be stuck with a bunch of those crawling up grates to me. I didn't think it was boring. I didn't think it was too long. I thought it was action-packed, and I thought it was a really good movie. So that's a slay for me.
Take that, Colton. Take it.
What about you, Rowan? Is it a slay for you?
It's a motherfucking slay. If there ever has been a slay on this show, I fucking love this movie. I don't even need to go into it. I don't need to give a rant. It's just awesome. It's amazing. It's perfect. It's a slay. You know what? Just say whatever you're gonna say, Colton. What would you rate it?
Yeah, like that's the thing. Like you guys are thinking that I'm gonna give it like a negative review or something. I still said the movie is great. Like the movie is great to me. It is like an 8 out of 10. It is a 4-star movie. It's just, to me, it is not like a masterpiece. You know, I can pick a lot of holes in this that if I were watching it for a first time in a
You're
theater,
obsessed with holes, man. You're obsessed with holes.
Well, we were talking about the Ionic imagery. What can I say? You know, I got one thing on the mind. But yeah, it's I'm gonna give it a yay. I think like it's a classic for a reason. I think a lot of the sci-fi action is fun. There are moments where it goes for 20 or 30 minutes where I was quite bored. And I prefer the xenomorph design in the first movie. But that being said, I think Ripley's a lot better designed in this. She's a lot more three-dimensional. I do like the maternal aspects to her character. Despite I've seen people sometimes argue that weakens the character, but to me, like, I thought it was just a more fully formed character. And yeah, it's still a yay from me. I don't know. For me, it's like both of those movies are very good to great sci-fi classic horror movies. I enjoy it. It's a yay. What about you, Mike?
I'm also a yay. Sometimes I bounce back and forth, but I think I'm a yay because I absolutely love this movie. Even though I have the same sort of, like, I do think it's a little bit too long. But I always watch the longer cut, so, you know, I don't know. I wasn't there going like, oh my god, like, when is it going to end? It was unfortunate timing that when I rewatched it this time around, it was late at night and I was exhausted. But yeah, I love it. I think it's, you know, it is one of the great sequels, you know, of all time, of course. But I do like the first one, and I'm going to throw out a hot take here. The third one, just as much, if not more.
Yeah.
So I love David Fincher, and of course the first one is more of a, like, you know, they always call it, you know, the haunted house, and I just love that mood. And I just think the characters in this one, some of them, I feel like it's overstuffed with characters because they have to give you the cannon fodder because they need more massacring because everything gets blown up, like, number-wise. Like, the protagonists are, you know, there's so many more of them, and there's, of course, so many more of the aliens because they've infested the place. So, obviously, that's part of it, but, you know, and then they're like the military, so they're kind of all meant to be a little bit interchangeable and stuff, so, but, like, of course, when you get down to the core few, they're great. Love the actors, love the characters, etc. Yeah, it's a total yay. And also, it's a yay because I have to throw this out here because I can't watch this movie without thinking about this one thing that happened to me when I was in university. When I took a film studies class, you know, one of the things we learned about was, like, close reading of films and, like, scenes and even specific... We were supposed to be able to... The whole point of it was you were supposed to, at the end of the course, be able to, like, take a frame, a very, like, iconic frame from a scene and, like, do a close reading of it and just sort of, like, explicate it. Like you would say, what's happening here, why it's important, how is the framing important, etc., etc. And so on our final exam, the professor gave us, like, 3 very famous film stills, frames, and then you had to like, the first bit of the exam was just, like, little short answer questions or whatever, and then it's like you had to write a short essay doing a close reading of that film frame. One of them was actually the 1950s Invasion of the Body Snatchers. The second one, I can't quite remember what it was because it was forever ago. But the third one was the still of Ripley with the big gun in one arm and Newt holding onto her in the other.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and it was just supposed to be all about, like, the gender norms in action movies and, like, blah, blah, and, you know, masculinity and all that. So I banged out my essay and it was fine. And there was these bunch of stoner girls in the class who were absolute dolls that we kind of became friends with. So we were all, like, waiting outside the class after the exam was over, like, waiting for our friends to come out and talk. So 2 of the stoner girls came out, and I was like waiting for my friend, and I was like, oh my god, like, how did you find it? Like, what did you write your essay on? And she's like, oh, I did the alien one. And I just was like, oh yeah, you know, I wrote on that too. Like, I loved it like played with Sigourney Weaver's like kind of like masculinity and like the gender roles and motherhood and stuff. And you should see this girl, like, she was clearly stoned at the exam, and she just looks at me and she's like, you could see her face drop, and she's like, that was a woman? She wrote her whole fucking essay not knowing that it was Sigourney Weaver and talking about the man in the film still. So that's like 50% or actually probably more of her exam was this. And I like just lost my mind. I was like, okay, I love this burnout so much. Anyway, years later, it turns out that the professor ended up being a mentor of mine. And years later, we would like get together and, you know, have drinks and stuff and barbecue. And I remember one night, like, I just thought of it because we were talking about movies, and I was like, oh my god, remember when I took that class with you and there was a girl? And I started telling the story about the alien and her thinking it was a man, and he was like, I vividly remember that. I just thought it was so funny. How do you not know you're taking this film studies class and you don't know that that's Sigourney Weaver? In Aliens.
I mean, I'm sure it was probably one of the picks for the class as well, right? You guys probably had to watch Aliens as part of the study.
Yeah,
right?
like there was like 20 films we had to watch, and it was like, oh my god, like I just thought it was so funny. So it's like, even if it was a garbage movie, it would be a yay to me, because that girl being stoned and writing her essay and literally completely fucking up the whole interpretation of the movie. Like,
bless her heart. I wonder where she is.
God love her. I know. I think about her all the time. Every time I think about this movie, I think about her now, and I'm like, I should look her up. But then I remembered I don't. Oh, and hilariously, so we were all exchanging numbers at the end, and so I gave them my number for our group, and then she gave me her number for their group, because we were like, oh yeah, let's go to a movie together. I fucking get home and look at the number, and it's literally only 6 digits.
Oh my.
It was one of those days, right? So this movie always reminds me of that little lore of Mike. So yeah, yay, love it.
I hope our listeners enjoyed that 15-minute diatribe.
Whatever, it's more interesting than Rowan.
You better leave that in, Rowan. I can see you cutting that. You better leave that all in, word for word. Before we get into listener questions, because I know that's where you're going to pivot, Alien 3, I've only ever seen it that one time at a New Year's Eve party. Do you have to watch the theatrical or the director's cut of that? Like, is there an improvement? I know people hate that movie. I'm just curious.
I like the work cut, or whatever it's called. Is it the work cut? The assembly cut. That's what it's called.
Okay, the assembly cut.
I enjoyed it because it was just more of something that I liked anyway. I haven't watched it in years.
Yeah, that adds like an hour to the movie or something, doesn't it? Like the assembly cut? Yeah, okay.
But that was another one of those movies, I think, that like some other like horror movies and stuff had like really weirdly high caliber like coup writers, and then gets gutted, and then you're never sure like if what you're watching is not as good as you want it to be because of the interference, or because these people just fumbled the bag, or what. But every time I've watched it in the last like 10 years, it's been that assembly cut. But I don't think it matters, really. Like, it's...
Yeah.
Because most people don't like it anyway, so they certainly don't want to watch like an extra 45 minutes or whatever, but I do.
Gotcha.
Yeah, next, I figure we'll stroll over to the Horrific Hotline, because I know we have... we didn't ask for anything on the Horrific Hotline this episode, because we didn't know what was going to be the movie. But we felt it was only right that we leak the results to the person that holds the Horrific Hotline up,
yes,
Nicholas. So we've got to go and see what Nicholas had to say.
So it seems that my highly controversial take on Vampire in Brooklyn wasn't quite enough to get me banned from the podcast. So here I am back again. And this is great because I get a few seconds to talk about one of my top 10 movies of all time, Aliens, which is really exciting. I just can watch this movie over and over again, so it's a definite slay. And instead of just naming all the amazing things about the movie, which I'm sure and hope you have done over the last hour or so. I'd instead focus briefly on one important aspect, that is the difference between the special edition and the theatrical edition, because I think there's an interesting take there, as I prefer the theatrical version, since the special edition has scenes that show what happened to the colonists before the Marines arrive. But very sadly, the theatrical edition misses one very important scene in the beginning when Ripley learns about the death of her daughter while she was asleep. And I think that scene is important for her character and shows Sigourney Weaver's amazing performance, which was, I think, even Academy Award nominated for the movie, which, as for a science fiction horror movie, just to get a nomination for such an award as the Academy Awards is incredible. They are often sadly overlooked. So overall, I prefer the theatrical version, but I really love for that one scene to be in there to make it a whole movie. And just at the end, happy anniversary to you guys, 4 incredible years. I hope there will be 4 or even 8 or 16 more years of the podcast. And I hope my takes won't get too controversial as to that I get banned at one point, because I think Vampire in Brooklyn is an okay movie. So all the best to you, and it has been an honor so far.
No, Nicholas, I don't think your bad takes will get you banned. Otherwise, we'd have to ban Rowan from the podcast. So,
you're okay. I see how it is, guys. I see how it is.
But no, I haven't seen that scene that you're talking about, and I know that Rowan mentioned it in the review. So that might be one that I actually Google up, because, like, once again, I really like the maternal aspects of this movie. So having that scene earlier in the movie probably would have set up Ripley's, like, character journey like even better. So yeah, I'll probably check that out after we're done recording. And obviously, thanks for calling in. Like, obviously you are the one that basically keeps the horrific hotline alive, and you know,
we appreciate it.
Yeah, Rowan, I think you were gonna say something there.
No, I was saying thank you, and we'll see. 16 years. That's let's get to 5 first, and then 16.
Yeah, we'll see. And if you'd like to leave a message like Nicholas, you can do so on the horrific hotline at 1-902-418-8620, or you can just message it, or you can just message it directly to itslayspodcast@gmail.com, or send us a message on Instagram. If you send us a voicemail or an MP3, we'll figure out a way to get it on the show. Have us react to it.
Yeah, and so we had a couple of mailbag questions for the old anniversary, so we figured we would answer those. So we had friend of the podcast, Brad, write in, and he wanted to know who is the biggest zaddy in horror history.
Brad Wood.
Is this the Brad that was on the Predator episode?
Yes, this is...
Oh, and Alien. Oh my god.
And Alien, actually,
yeah.
Okay.
So, you know what, Mike, start us out with who you think is the biggest horror zaddy in horror history.
Okay, I'm going to give you 2, and I know that Brad would agree with me on this, as would everybody. We are talking, and they're from actually the same era, so in the early John Carpenter days, and in the, Sam Raimi days, Bruce Campbell and Kurt Russell. I'm just saying, yeah. Especially Kurt Russell. Yeah, both of them, though, they're, toe-to-toe. Literally just... We don't even need... They can rule together. It can be a 2 zaddy reign. We don't... There does not need to be just one.
The old tag team.
Jesus Christ.
They can tag team.
I don't watch very many horror movies looking for the best horror zaddy. It's not really something that pops into my head as I'm watching things. I would probably just go with Joel from The Last of Us, which is a video game. Pedro Pascal does a good job of portraying that in the show, but he's not quite as gruff as the one in the video game, which is the one that's very much like if you have daddy issues and Joel's proud of you in the game, it's something, I'd go with Joel. I don't know. I don't know what to say with this question.
That is so funny. You just literally described a friend of mine who's obsessed with the game and TV show. daddy issues and obsessed with
Yeah.
that character. Yeah.
What about you, Jill? You scoffed at one point when Mike was talking. So
They were choices. But anyway, it's funny that you mentioned Joel and Pedro Pascal, because he has gone on record in interviews to say that he does identify as a zaddy. He's 100% a zaddy. So, you know, it's on record. It's true. For me, it's going to have to be Jeffrey Dean Morgan from The Walking Dead as Negan. He is so fucking hot. God, he gives me daddy issues. And that is all I'm going to say. What about you, Ron?
I mean, I'm going with the OG, the original Zaddy, Bela Lugosi, Dracula.
Oh, okay. Good choice.
I mean, when we did that episode, we talked about it. There might not be anyone else other than can't even think of anyone else that just, you know, seeps sexuality like Bela Lugosi and Dracula. So
listen, I said aliens was mother's mothering, and he's father's fathering. Daddy's daddying, if you will. Zaddy's zaddying.
So then we had I don't know if it's more of a demand, but it was kind of phrased as a question, and that was from another friend of the podcast, Cecily. She wanted to know, for next year, can House of Wax get a handicap in the poll? And they said, excited for the episode either way, just not as excited.
Aww.
Cecily, I tried. I got on every Twitter account that I have and voted. I tried, girl. I tried. I did. For you, for me, for both of us. I tried.
Well, you can choose that as a mic pick.
I can. And you know what? I'll do that. And I'll be like, I'm picking House of Wax. Just for
I was just gonna say, like, Cecily can just come on the podcast and we can do House
right?
of
Like,
Wax at some point, right? Like, you know, a little bit behind the scenes, like, I'm the one who has to do the matchups on the poll, and sometimes it is very much like a heavyweight going against something. And Cecily might remember, but like last year, I automatically put House of Wax in the poll, and I gave it like a weak matchup, so it would at least get to round 2. And I think I did it again this time, but then it was just like,
no, it was Rosemary's Baby. Are you out of your mind?
Okay, I must have used a randomizer
I saw
for that
was
one.
like, okay, so you're literally sabotaging, as Miss Fiercelicious would say, sabotage.
Okay, all right, maybe I missed it this time, but last year for sure it had like a weak matchup, so I don't know. I must have used a random. I do use a randomizer for the seeds, and then I'll look and basically be like, oh, are we gonna eliminate 2 of the best choices right off the top? And maybe we did with Rosemary's Baby and House of Wax, but yeah, I don't know. You can just come on the podcast, we'll discuss it. I mean, whatever.
And then our final mailbag question. We had a question come in on Slasher, and of course I was an idiot and I did not write the person's name. I think it was like Horror Man 20 something. They'll know who it is.
You'll get a shout out in the next episode.
Yeah,
when Ro
that's
gets
right.
his shit together.
Write in and say, it was me. I was Horror Man.
But they asked, what is a horror movie you feel is underrated? Yeah, we'll start with you, Jill.
Oh my God, every time.
Every time.
Just put me on the spot like that. Well, that is a very difficult question. And I'm going to go with Ghost Ship, because that's the only thing I can think of. The only movie that I can think of that, you know, hasn't blown up or has some sort of cult status. And I thought it was pretty decent for the time. And I have fond
And
memories.
that Colton didn't poo-poo and say that's not underrated. How dare you?
Yeah, and Colton didn't shit on it. So that's honestly why I chose it.
I kind of agree with that pick. I think it's kind of cult now. At least the opening scene.
That one scene it doesn't make the whole movie.
That one scene alone, I feel like it got itself a nice little collector's edition Scream Factory release the other year that pretty much sold out. But
because they only made like 50 of them because they didn't think anyone was gonna buy it.
I was gonna say I still think it's wildly underseen, so I like that pick.
Okay.
Thank you. What about you, Rowan?
So yeah, mine. I told these guys that mine's gonna be off the beaten path. I gotta twist this a bit because this would be more of a thriller, suspense, but I classify it under horror. Because it's basically a slasher. And that is a great early 2000s teen film called Swim Fan, which I am a massive fan of. I own it on many. I own like the VHS. I own the DVD. I don't think it's out on Blu-ray. But
this man just said swim fan.
I just did swim fan.
This man just said swim fan. Okay.
I am a fan of this movie. I remember seeing this movie in the theater, and I don't know. I watched it not too long ago, like less than a year ago, and I was like, you know what? It's kind of a bop. It kind of goes. So that is my pick. What about
Erica
you?
Christensen, love it.
That's right.
Yeah.
What about you, Colton?
Yeah, it's a little bit hard for me. I've kind of been going through. I had a few ones that I was thinking about. It's just they're all like basically right on the same level. I think they're all underrated. I'm, they're all got an average of 3 on Letterboxd, and I gave them all a 4. Probably the one that's the most controversial might be The Lodge from 2019. I don't know.
I never saw that. I bought it and then never watched it.
Yeah, it's a really slow burn psychological horror movie. Deals with like a stepmom being trapped in a cabin with her spouse's 2 kids, and essentially there's a lot of like religious like zealotry in the movie. Like I think she's super religious and the kids aren't, so it winds up being like a lot of tension derived from that. And then there's also an aspect too of like, are these people in the right headspace to be dealing with things? Are they hallucinating? Have they huffed too much of the gas of the heater in here? Like, are they crazy? It's a very like malicious movie that I remember when I put it on late at night when it came out on streaming a couple of years ago. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really good. Similarly, like Incantation within the last year, I don't think any of you have watched that yet. I've talked about it a couple of times, and it was the movie that I kind of called into every horror movie on Netflix. Oh my God, I can't believe I was blanking on the name. But I called into their podcast as well, like their summer special, to kind of hype it up. And then they did it a couple of months later, and I think they liked it, but once again, not as much as me. Like, I think the movie's great. It's a found footage movie, Taiwanese horror movie that's just, I don't know, it's very creepy and unsettling. It does a lot of things with the film language that a lot of horror movies don't do. And since I mentioned every horror movie on Netflix, they also reviewed a movie called The Wind by Emma Tammy from 2018, and I remember they all hated it. They did not enjoy it very much. And looking at my Letterboxd reviews, a lot of people here don't enjoy it very much either. But it's like a folk horror that's set on like the frontier, like early the expansion of the American frontier, and it's basically just a woman in her kind of cabin or whatever you call your house back then, and she just kind of hears something like in the wind, like blowing across the plains, and it winds up being like, once again, a psychological horror movie that has like a folk horror slant to it. Maybe there's demons, maybe she's just crazy, and I thought it was really good. I thought it was a stellar directorial debut, but I don't think the directors went on to do anything, and maybe it's people like every horror movie on Netflix putting her down. But yeah, those are 3 underrated horror movies that I thought were pretty great.
Boys come for Colton.
Yeah, I'm just joking, guys. But yeah, what about you, Mike? I think you were like making a list for most of the episode as we were recording. So what's your choice?
No, listen, it was hard for me because like I feel this way about a lot of things, but then a lot of things I feel like I thought at one point were underrated, kind of like, because now it's so easier for people to like rediscover things. I feel like things are now being like rated, let's say. But I will say one, I was actually thinking I didn't want to go too wild with it, and I thought like I might just do ones that we have talked about. And I was trying to think of like, because we've done like a lot of really, kind of like legendary, mainstream, beloved classics, but we've also done like some really awful trash too, and everything in between. But I was thinking like, what would, like, if I was to pick like one movie from what we've talked about and just said like, I think this is an example of an underrated movie. I did have a lot of trouble with this, but I think The Eyes of Laura Mars.
Oh yeah,
because it's so good, and everybody that I tell about it or show it to ends up like really enjoying it. And I feel like there's a really big cult audience waiting for it that just hasn't found it because I don't think it's really been like put out. Like I feel like one of those, like if like a Scream Factory put it out or something, that it would get like a renaissance. And like it's got like an amazing soundtrack, and I just, it's like Barbara Streisand, like hello, Anyway, I think Eyes of Laura Mars is like a really underrated horror movie.
So that's been on my watch list for ages, just because you've brought it up a couple of times since I've joined the show very favorably, and I'm sure I listened to your episode years ago whenever you did it. But I'll definitely make sure to check that out before the next time we record. I'll make sure I give a little review on what I've been watching.
Yeah. And I mean, if you don't like it, I will totally understand, because it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea.
Does it seem like something I'd like, Mike? You know my taste pretty well by now.
I feel like there's aspects of it that you might really enjoy.
Fair enough.
But yeah, I'm just interested, no matter what, to hear your take on it, because like I said, I think it's definitely underappreciated.
I'll make sure to watch it before next episode.
Okay.
100%. Yeah.
So Colton, do you want to tell them where they can find us at?
Of course, if you've made it this far in the podcast, which it's looking like a pretty lengthy one, and you don't know where to find us, it's at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Slasher, Letterboxd, basically everywhere. If there's a social media, we're there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to gain access to the Patreon exclusive show, Stream Screams, hosted by Jill, get access to episodes of our main show 48 hours early, and support the podcast financially, you can head on over to patreon.com/itslayspodcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. So, Rowan, go ahead and plug the playlist.
Yeah, so you can go to Spotify and look up the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media in our link tree. There's a link directly to it. On there, we put music and scores from horror movies we review, or horror movies we love, or just iconic horror movies. So yeah, go listen to it and get your spooky music on like the rest of us. And I think the last thing for us to do, now that we're done celebrating the 4-year anniversary, we're coming down from the highs of all the copious amount of drugs we've done during this episode, is to announce the next episode, which was a Mike pick. Mike, let them know what they should be watching.
Okay, well, strap on your boots. Or whatever, your slippers. Step into your comfy slippers and get into bed. Pull out your laptop and stream Full Cheese 1981 The Beyond.
Get your strap-ons ready.
Get your strap-ons ready. Strap your strap-ons on. Slip them in. Slip the slippers in the strap-ons.
What the fuck?
So yeah, The Beyond, get into your eye holes, and we'll be back, talking about that. So I think that is everything. Thank you for all the support over the year. We had lots of exciting things go on. We added a new member to try to balance out this cast and, come to my side on some of the arguments, and, because we got some cast members that just shit all over movies from my childhood.
What can I say?
Yeah. So thank you for all the support. And as always, I'm your humble host, Rowan.
Thank you. It's Mike.
I'm Colton. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Happy anniversary, everybody. It's Jill.
And see you later.
We're going to expand our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
But the prime time gets.
Not with the new Fletch.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.